Hi everyone, and welcome to another Collectomaniac video. Now today we have for you the second video following on from my unboxing video to One's Customs pieces. Here we have Voorhees V1 or version 1, the early years. Now it's my understanding that this is the first in a series of figures where one makes almost concept or kind of his own artistic impressions of the early years of these infamous horror characters, and certainly from One's latest comments he's working on the next version of this early years Jason Voorhees piece. So you know where I am, brother, hit me up. I'm ready for the next piece, and I'm pretty sure all of the viewers are too. The set itself comes with, see, the main body of Jason, a backpack, what's known as a bindle, several different weapons, 3 head sculpts in total, and this kind of half cabin, half outside themed base, a few other goodies and extras that we're going to be showing, and of course the COA. Now starting with the base, you can see One has opted for this double-sided base, which certainly within the last 2 or so years he's become, in my opinion, quite known for. One side is meant to be in the outside of the cabin, so obviously mud with rocks compacted in it, obviously on the surface as well. There's a tree that's been cut down. I like the kind of sliver of grass on the edge, just gives that little bit more detail of where we perhaps are. Now the tree trunk on the left hand side, it's been sculpted very nicely. I believe One's just used a cardboard tube and has obviously put resin or sculpting on the outside of it. It's detailed very nicely. I like the foliage at the top. Now the thing that makes the base very different to any of the other ones I've seen before is what One's decided to do with the window. So instead of making a full side of the cabin, he's opted to effectively just have this window pane and frame on a stick, which is a really unique touch. And when you look at the detail that One's been able to capture on the window, see, it looks like glass. It's scratched up, there's dirt on it, but I love the handprint. It's small details like this, as I always say, that really separates One's Customs from the rest of, to be honest, his competition, because it almost makes it appear like Jason has, well, to be honest, been peering in from the outside, spying on the councillors or people who've been staying there, but obviously too afraid to say anything. And then if we flick to the other side, this obviously is meant to show the inside of the cabin with this wooden decking floor. And the other really cool thing about the base is that One has put the small crotch grabber. Effectively that enables the piece to stand on its own without falling over. He's put slots either side of the base so that you can position it wherever you like. Again, it's just another really unique touch here, and just shows a lot of thought has gone into this base. So overall, I'm a really big fan of this base. One's done an excellent job here, and it's unique to any of the ones I have previously or have seen him produce. Moving on to the body of Jason himself, the first thing that screams to mind here is that this kid is a real survivor. I mean, the socks itself tell a story that I believe they're even just 2 different socks entirely. One's absolutely torn to shreds, the other one is a little bit better, but the fact that he doesn't even have any shoes. I mean, he's clearly had to walk around Crystal Lake just like this, and the whole of his body tells this story. There's an absolute plethora of weathering, mud, dirt. There's these trousers that he's wearing. They were once trousers. They're now turned into shorts. They're torn to shreds. I love the small detail, as you'll probably be seeing on the screen, of the rat hanging from his belt. I mean, is this a toy? Is this food for later? I mean, who really knows? He's got skin lesions and almost bits of algae all over his body, just like at the end of part 1 or the original Friday the 13th, where we see Jason pop out the lake at the end. Another interesting detail, the hand wraps, the various scraps of material around his arms. Every part of Jason here is just adding to this theme that I said this kid has been given nothing. He's had to fight and scrape and just to survive. I think One's done an incredible job, and it's not just the clothing. His body tells this story as well. And again, this story is continued around the back of the piece. Again, I will say these aren't just pieces meant to be viewed from the front. They are 360-degree pieces. So they tell this story that one's wanting to show here, particularly with this concept piece. The backpack he's wearing, again, Jason probably stole this. It's got a bedroll wrapped on it. I really like all the weathering and the detail and the rips he's put into the bag. The other small detail, again, is this bindle that he's carrying. And does he sometimes bring the backpack on trips? Other times does he just bring the bindle, depending on whether he's hunting or not? Overall, Wands has done an incredible job on what I would describe as this concept piece. These are the years that we never got to see on screen with Jason. You obviously see him at the end of the original Friday 13th, and then we fast forward to part 2, where effectively he's a fully grown adult. It's a real shame in some ways, but I'm just glad that there are artists like Wands producing these, because it just really sparks the imagination for me. Starting with the first of a few accessories included in this set is of course Jason's infamous machete. Now this isn't as weathered or as rusted in effect as some of the machetes that one has included with older pieces, but this makes sense. This is Voorhees the early years, so there is still that of a shine to it. It's not rusted or caked up. It doesn't effectively been covered in blood. Now whether Jason would have actually been able to use this to kill a fully grown adult, who knows really. I mean, there are other tools at his disposal that are included in this set, but again, it's almost him developing this muscle memory that would have made sense as to why he's so lethal in the Friday the 13th film franchise. The next tool that Jason has at his disposal is a serrated knife, and you can immediately tell the difference between the machete and this, and the fact that this is clearly heavily used. There's a strong colour of dried blood on here, probably some rust, and this makes much more sense when you consider the size of Jason. He would have probably used this to kill rats, kill other wildlife, etc., because it's much more manageable to his size. And the only unfortunate thing is it doesn't quite get held in his hand properly. Now that's probably just a case of trying to squeeze the palm around it, but it's just something small I thought I would note out. But otherwise it really adds to the part of this character that one's trying to establish here. Next we have, amusingly enough, a slingshot. Now my first real encounter with slingshot is of course The Simpsons and Bart Simpson. Jason's going to be using this very differently to Bart, and I imagine Jason would use this either to distract his prey or whatever he's hunting, or even to distract counselors and so forth, to lure them away if they were close to finding him. The construction of the slingshot is meant to simulate a branch from a tree, and possibly a strap or some kind of elastic, which again Jason probably stole. Maybe he saw one of the counselors' magazines, or maybe he even saw one of them with a slingshot. Again, this is obviously something that's improvised on the go, which is probably why it doesn't look quite as efficient, but I imagine he got quite lethal with it. Now here's something I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have expected to see in this set. It's a very cute bear. Now this bear is a few years old, it's weathered, it's got stuffing coming out of it, it's covered in dirt. Now did Jason have this bear before he drowned in the lake? Did he find it after? Either way, it's not really a huge concern. I just think it's a very nice touch that one's added in this set. It almost shows that Jason, he is still human underneath. Now clearly those tendencies kind of go awry later on, but it's a little reminder, if you understand my meaning. The last of the included accessories is of course Pamela Voorhees' head. Now this is of utmost importance to Jason, and the real difference here between some of the other heads that I've seen one produce is that she seems to have a bit more hair. The skin isn't quite as dehydrated and almost leatherized, which makes sense given the age of Jason here. But I like the fact that one's included it in here. It is an integral part of the Jason mythology and Jason character. It's painted extremely well. The sculpt is, of course, on point as always, and yeah, it's a nice accessory. So great job here, one. Now, just before I show the head sculpts off, I'm going to just quickly focus in on this hat that one has included here. Again, it's I'd describe it as a fishing hat. One of the first thoughts I had was this kind of some sort of homage to Ralph, the You're All Doomed guy. I mean, maybe not. Again, one's weathered the hat extremely well. I like the sort of pull cords hanging off the end, and it would be realistic if Jason's spending, you know, days upon days and obviously years in the end outside, he might want a hat. Certainly when you look at some of the head sculpts, maybe that's partly to blame for how his hair went the way it did. Who knows? You know, this is just a bit of fun, I imagine, one's included here, but it's a nice little accessory. Here we have the first of 3 head sculpts that one is included in this set. And for me, the first thing that strikes me is that this head sculpt is based on the film version of a young Jason, especially when you look at the features such as the cleft palate, see the cut above the lip, and the way his eye socket seems to be a good sort of inch or so higher than the others. I can only commend one's customs on the paint job here. It's simply incredible. The vein work that has gone into here, that is also consistent throughout the piece, which I may or may not have mentioned before. Then when you look at the skin lesions that Jason has coming off his nose, the only thing to describe these lesions are almost like leprosy. I mean, one's gone for a kind of grim outlook on Jason here, but I really like it. The way his hair is almost completely gone on his left-hand side or right-hand side as you're seeing it on screen. One's put an awful lot of detail in here. You can see the blue eyes very easily. You've got the buck teeth. Now these are slightly different to how they were in the film, but again, it's continuing on with this concept. The bleach blonde hair, now I imagine that's from the sun. Who knows, you know, maybe he didn't wear his hat too often, guys. I mean, considering the age Jason is meant to be here, maybe early teens, possibly even younger, looks like he's had a considerably hard life, which is consistent with the rest of the piece, as you've probably seen. Overall, I think one's done an excellent job here. It's certainly reflective of the head sculpt or the character from the original Friday the 13th films, but it's just far harsher, if you understand me. Looking at the second head sculpt, I immediately see the unused, or rather under mask, makeup appliances designed by Stan Winston for Friday the 13th Part 3. The way the bridge of the nose is almost squashed and the eyes have that intense stare, and also the way the brow is very heavily prominent over the eyes. Also the width of the nose. And these are really small details, and I'm sure they're deliberate from one here. When you look at one's custom's actual Stan Winston head sculpt, the similarities are uncanny. So I find this is a really, really cool detail that one has effectively turned this head sculpt in to match the missing Stan Winston head sculpt. Now the paint is very, very well done. There's a lot of weathering and dirt that's gone around the forehead, around the teeth. The teeth are slightly different as well. These gums have a bit more redness to them. They still have that buck tooth look, and differently to the first head sculpt, he has a lot more hair. The tone is slightly different. It's more of a almost what I class as an ash blonde look. Again, this is what makes these pieces for me, the different options that one provides, well, us all with these pieces. In my opinion, he's done an excellent job here, not just from the unique sculpt, but to the hair and the very, very well done paintwork. Captured all those details, such as the color of the eyes, even underneath the eyes, the actual eyelids, they're reddened as well. Just small details like these guys. Now, last but of course not least is the third head sculpt. And what I find very interesting about this head sculpt is that, of course, at first glance you think, well, this is just the burlap sack, of course, that Jason wears in part 2, but it's not quite that simple. Now, yes, this is made of burlap, or meant to be made of burlap, but what's interesting enough is that if any of you recall the Friday the 13th remake, where effectively it was a wrapped head instead of just wearing a sack, this almost seems like a blend between the two. I think it's really inventive from one. There's also some rope that seems to be wrapped around the neck, or whether that's just fraying from the actual burlap itself. But again, I think he's done an excellent job. This is almost like a merging of the two styles, shall we say here. Now, of course, the right, or Jason's left eye, is visible, and one's kept with the blue eyes, which is consistent throughout the head sculpts. Which again is just nice to have that level of continuity here with these head sculpts. It just makes it seem that these are all the same character. But also he's gone for a nice amount of weathering on the head sculpt. You can see almost where the material is wrinkled, there's fraying to the edges. Oh, this is a nice addition to the set and really tops it off for me. To sum up my overall thoughts on this piece is quite simple. I believe it's a stunning set. I personally believe it's one of the best Jason Voorhees sets that one's ever made. Now, of course, there's a number of young Jason pieces that one has produced. They're of the more traditional moment in the film, I believe at the end of the original Friday the 13th, where Jason pulls the only survivor in. Now, whether that was a dream or not, we're never really sure, but one has taken this a step further. It gives us a look at the character that we never got to see on screen, a glimpse of what he could have been, the kind of life that he had. As you know, in the films, it skips forward many years to a fully grown Jason, and we never get to see these things. The base is nothing short of genius, and I believe is unique to this set. The head sculpts, every single one of them are different, and gives the option to effectively go with whatever style of makeup and vision that the films then took after, obviously, the original Friday the 13th. The accessories and perfectly matching to the character, even with the addition of the bear. As you can also see, the backpack is removable, so there are just so many display options, and as I always say, I love having display options. I don't have to have them in these static poses, and everything about this set allows me to do this. I'm just excited for the second version in this set. Again, you know where I am, ones. I'm always ready. Thank you very much for watching this Collectormaniac video. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.